I will be the very first person to admit that I am one of the most skeptical people you will ever meet. I do not believe in ghosts. I do not believe in the paranormal, and I am always the first person to roll my eyes when someone starts telling me a spooky story. I usually assume that people are either exaggerating or just completely making things up for attention. But what happened to me just a few weeks ago has left me completely at a loss for words. I wanted to write all of this down while it was still incredibly fresh in my mind, because to be honest with you, I am still absolutely terrified. I keep thinking that if I put this story out there on the internet, maybe someone with a logical mind can explain what happened to me. Because right now, I have absolutely no explanation, and the more I think about it, the more it scares me. It all started when my close friend Steve and his wife decided to go out of town for the weekend to celebrate their wedding anniversary. They do not get to travel alone very often because they have 2 young kids and a very energetic dog. Steve is doing incredibly well financially, and a few years ago, he built this massive, beautiful home deep in the woods. He built it in the middle of nowhere because he absolutely loves his privacy, and if you have the financial means to do that, you really cannot blame him. But because the house is so isolated, leaving it empty is always a bit of a concern. As luck would have it, the stars aligned perfectly for them that weekend. Their 2 kids were scheduled to go on a school trip, meaning they would be out of town anyway. That left just Steve, his wife, and their dog. When Steve told me about their plans, I insisted on going over to watch their dog for the weekend. I figured it would give them a peace of mind and allow them to have a nice, romantic getaway without worrying about a thing. Steve was thrilled. The plan was set in stone, and I prepared to spend the weekend with his beautiful golden retriever named Cooper. I made my way out to the property on Friday afternoon. The drive was peaceful, taking me down country roads before turning onto Steve's private, half-mile-long gravel driveway, flanked by dense pine trees. The house itself was a beautiful multi-level home with huge glass windows that fit perfectly into the surrounding woods. Since I did not have to work over the weekend, my plan was to stay there from Friday afternoon through Sunday evening. When I unlocked the front door, Cooper was already waiting for me, his tail wagging frantically. After giving him some love, I walked into the kitchen and realized that Steve had gone completely above and beyond. He had stocked the refrigerator with my favorite foods, left premium steaks to grill, and filled the pantry with snacks. It was a bit of overkill for a simple pet-sitting job, but I was definitely not complaining. I love dogs and I love quiet weekends, so this was an absolute win-win situation for me. As the afternoon faded into evening, the woods outside grew pitch black, without any streetlights or nearby neighbors. The darkness out there was absolute, the kind of dark where you cannot see your hand in front of your face if you step outside. Cooper and I settled onto the massive couch in the living room. I turned on a comedy movie, and Cooper curled up right next to my feet, completely relaxed. Around 9 o'clock in the evening, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Steve, asking how things were going. After I told him everything was great, he sent another message that said, "Don't get scared being all alone in that massive house. It can get pretty spooky at night when you are by yourself in the middle of the woods." I laughed out loud and sent him a single laughing emoji, telling him to shut up and enjoy his anniversary. As I mentioned earlier, I am an extremely skeptical, logical person. The creaks and groans of an empty house in the woods do not bother me in the slightest. I know that wild animals and random noises are just a part of rural life, so I never let my imagination run wild. By the time midnight rolled around, I was feeling pretty tired. I turned off all the house lights, made sure the deadbolts on the front and back doors were locked, and headed up to the guest bedroom on the 2nd floor. Cooper followed me up the stairs, and he immediately claimed his spot on the soft rug right next to my bed. I climbed into bed, and we both drifted off to sleep around 1 o'clock in the morning. At exactly 3:21 in the morning, I woke up to a sound that instantly made my heart race. It was the sound of Cooper barking downstairs, but this was not his usual playful bark when he wants to chase a ball. This was a loud, vicious, and incredibly angry bark. I will not lie to you, it actually did scare me. It was more of a surprise scare, but it definitely got my adrenaline pumping. I got out of bed and made my way downstairs, and the entire time I was walking down the steps, Cooper never stopped barking. The house was pitch black, and the sound of his echoes made the whole place feel empty and cold. I finally found Cooper in the kitchen. He was standing near the back wall, barking aggressively at the door that led down to the basement. All the hair on his back was standing completely straight up. He looked incredibly spooked by something. I called his name and tried to calm him down, but he completely ignored me. He just kept staring at that door and barking. I walked over and grabbed the doorknob. The moment my hand touched the metal, Cooper went into a complete spiral. He started running back and forth, barking even louder, completely losing his mind. Of course, my very first thought was that there must be an intruder in the basement. It was possible, but highly unlikely, because Steve has a top-of-the-line security system, and breaking in would not be an easy task. Still, I was not going to take any chances. I reached over to the knife block on the kitchen counter, grabbed a large chef's knife, and slowly opened the basement door. Cooper ran right to the edge of the doorway, but he refused to cross the threshold. He just stood at the frame, growling deeply, his hair still sticking straight up. I turned on the basement light and slowly descended the stairs. I started yelling a bunch of nonsense, trying to sound a lot tougher than I actually am, but I heard absolutely nothing. I tried calling Cooper down to join me, but he would not move. I walked all around the finished basement, checking inside the closets, behind the large sectional sofa, and even in the bathroom. There was no intruder, and there were no ghosts. The only thing I did notice was how unreasonably cold it was down there. I know basements are typically cooler, but I had been in this basement dozens of times, and it was never this cold. It felt like a freezer, but at the end of the day, a cold room is no reason to run away, so I went back upstairs. I decided to spend the rest of the night on the living room couch. It took a while, but Cooper finally calmed down, and we both fell back asleep. The next day, Cooper was completely fine. We played outside in the yard, and I spent most of the day listening to music and watching movies. I actually went down into the basement at one point during the afternoon to grab a drink from the mini fridge, and the temperature was completely normal. It felt just like the rest of the house. I did not give it much thought and just went about my day. That night, I decided to stay on the living room couch instead of going up to the kid's bedroom, just in case Cooper had another basement door incident. I wanted to stay awake, but I ended up falling asleep while watching a movie. Once again, at almost the exact same time as the night before, I woke up to Cooper throwing an absolute fit. He was barking like the house was on fire. I ran into the kitchen and tried to get him to stop, but he would not listen to me. But this night was different. Cooper was even more erratic than he had been on Friday night. I knew nothing was down there, so I kept telling him that everything was okay, but it was like I was not even in the room. When I grabbed the basement doorknob this time, instead of continuing to bark, Cooper suddenly stopped and began to whimper and cry. It was the strangest, most heartbreaking sound. I let go of the knob, and when I tried to comfort him, he immediately started barking again. I was incredibly confused and annoyed. I grabbed the knob once more, opened the door, and went downstairs. Cooper immediately began to cry, again refusing to follow me. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I realized it was freezing cold again, just like the night before. But this time, there was a horrible, overwhelming smell. I do not even know how to describe it other than just pure decay. And then I noticed the mess. Several family pictures that Steve had hung on the wall were knocked face down on the carpet. The heavy bar stools near the small kitchen area were also knocked flat on the ground. Nothing else in the room was touched. I quickly picked up the pictures and set the bar stools back up, but the smell was so bad that I could not stand to be down there anymore. I ran back upstairs and locked the door behind me. Cooper continued to bark for about 30 minutes before he finally calmed down, and we eventually went back to sleep. The next morning, I went back down to the basement to try to find the source of that awful smell. But the moment I opened the door, I realized the smell was completely gone. There was not even a lingering odor in the air. Even stranger, Cooper followed me down the stairs with no hesitation, wagging his tail and acting as happy as could be. I was completely stumped. Steve and his wife got home around 1 o'clock on Sunday night. Cooper was jumping for joy to see them, While his wife took the dog outside, I sat down with Steve and explained everything that had happened over the weekend. I fully expected him to laugh and tell me I was playing a joke on him. But he did not laugh. He did not even smile. He just stood there, looking incredibly pale. He finally looked down at the floor and told me that when Cooper was a puppy, he used to have these exact same barking fits at that basement door. It had stopped years ago, so they had completely forgotten about it. They never found a reason for it back then, and then one night he just stopped doing it. I could tell Steve was deeply freaked out, much more than I was. We talked about it for a bit longer, but eventually I went home. It has been 2 weeks, and I cannot stop thinking about it. Steve told me that since they have been home, Cooper has been completely normal. I have tried to find a logical explanation, but nothing makes sense. What was the smell? Why was it so cold? And why did it only happen at night? I am losing sleep over this, and I do not even live in that house. If you think that story is unsettling, the next one is even more bizarre. It happened to a young woman named Sarah a few years ago. She had just gone through a difficult breakup with her boyfriend and decided to move into a cute, quiet apartment complex to get a fresh start. The complex itself was beautiful, with well-manicured lawns, fountains, and a very peaceful atmosphere. Sarah quickly made friends with her neighbors, and it felt like a wonderful, tight-knit community. Her apartment was located on the ground floor, and her bedroom windows faced a scenic courtyard. Because she was on the ground floor, she knew that anyone could easily walk right up to her bedroom window if they wanted to. But the community felt so safe that she never really worried about it. A few months into her lease, Sarah was getting ready for bed late one night when she heard a strange sound. It sounded like someone running very fast down the carpeted hallway outside her apartment. She walked over to the front door and looked through the peephole, but the hallway was completely empty. Since no kids lived in her building, she thought it was weird, but went to bed. Over the next few nights, she heard the exact same running sound. She decided not to get up and look, because it just did not seem important enough to ruin her sleep. But a few nights later, things took a weird turn. Sarah woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of soft, childlike giggling coming from right outside her bedroom window. It was incredibly strange, but she assumed some neighborhood kids were just hanging out in the courtyard and being silly. She tapped hard on the window glass and made a loud shushing sound. The giggling stopped instantly, but then, a second later, she heard a faint, deliberate tapping sound on the other side of the glass. It freaked her out, but she was determined not to let some kids scare her. She grabbed the edge of her heavy curtain and whipped it open. But when she looked out, the courtyard was completely empty. There was no one there. This giggling outside her window continued for the next few nights, and Sarah decided to just ignore it, assuming that if she did not react, the kids would get bored and stop messing with her. 2 days later, while she was at work, Sarah received an email from the apartment complex manager. The email was very short and urged her to stop by the leasing office as soon as she got home from work, claiming it was an urgent matter. Sarah spent the entire workday stressing about it, worrying that there was an issue with her rent or her lease. When she walked into the office that afternoon, the manager asked her to sit down and immediately locked the door. She began speaking in a very quiet, serious whisper. A security guard then walked into the room and sat down next to Sarah. The manager explained that while the security guard was reviewing some footage from the night before, he had discovered something highly disturbing. She turned a computer screen towards Sarah and pressed play. The footage showed the hallway directly outside Sarah's apartment door. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning. In the grainy video, 2 small hooded figures slowly approached her door. They looked to be the size of children, perhaps 10 or 12 years old. The most terrifying part of the video was that they stood just an inch away from her door, staring at it, completely motionless. The manager fast-forwarded the video. For nearly 10 minutes, the 2 figures did not move a single inch. They just stood there in the dark hallway. Finally, right before they walked away, one of the small figures reached out and began to repeatedly twist and rattle Sarah's doorknob. When the door did not open, they suddenly skipped away down the hall, completely out of the frame. Sarah felt a wave of absolute terror wash over her. She told the manager and the guard about the giggling and tapping at her window, but when they checked the courtyard cameras for those nights, they found absolutely nothing. They called the police and filed a report, but the officers said there was very little they could do since no entry was made. The security guard tried to track where the kids went after they skipped away, but they seemed to have completely vanished. They did not appear on any other camera in the entire complex. A week later, around 1:30 in the morning, Sarah was awake in her living room when she suddenly heard her front doorknob begin to rattle. She froze. The kids were back. She slowly walked over to the door, her heart hammering in her chest, and yelled through the wood for them to go away. Suddenly, she heard a soft, childlike voice whisper, "Mom, we are home. Please just open the door and let us in." Sarah stood there, completely paralyzed. The voice whispered again, "Please let us in. We are home now, please." The child's voice sounded incredibly desperate and sad. Sarah gathered her courage and yelled back that their mother did not live here anymore and that she was calling the police right now. Instantly, both kids began to giggle. Then, the doorknob began to shake violently, and one of the kids began throwing their entire body weight against her door, trying to force it open. Sarah stood there holding the door shut, occupied with the absolute terror that the lock would give way. After a few terrifying moments, the banging stopped and everything went completely silent. When she looked through the peephole, the hallway was empty. She called the police, and they arrived quickly, but they found no trace of any children in the building. A few days later, Sarah ran into the apartment manager in the parking lot. The manager pulled her aside and asked if she had experienced anything else. Sarah said no, and muttered that it was probably just some local kids playing a prank. The manager made a very grave face and told her she was not so sure. She explained that the woman who lived in Sarah's apartment before her was very strange, and that something absolutely horrible had happened to her children. The manager refused to give any specific details for privacy reasons, but she looked Sarah in the eyes and told her to keep locking her doors, because she did not believe this was a prank at all. Sarah never saw or heard the children again, but she moved out as soon as her lease was up. To this day, she cannot explain how those children got into the locked building without a key, where they went, or what the manager truly meant by her warning. As terrifying as that was, the final story is perhaps the most bone-chilling of all. It happened to a young man about 10 years ago, and it is an experience that still haunts him to this day. At the time, he was stuck in a mundane, dead-end retail job, working long hours just to pay his bills. The daily routine was incredibly draining, and he felt like he was just going through the motions of life. One afternoon, as he was leaving work and walking to his car in the employee parking lot, he noticed something bright neon pink stuck to his driver's side door handle. He walked over and saw that it was a sticky note with a handwritten message. It read, "You are special, and I hope you have an amazing day." And it had a little smiley face sticker attached to it. It was a very kind gesture, and it put a genuine smile on his face, so he did not think much of it and drove home. But the next afternoon, when he left work, there was another pink note in the exact same spot. This happened day after day, each note containing a sweet, uplifting message. He started to look forward to them. At that point in his life, he was not getting much attention, so it felt nice to be noticed by someone. He decided to play along with the game. He went out and bought his own pack of sticky notes, and before his shift the next morning, he stuck a note to his own car door that was friendly and a little bit flirtatious. When he left work that afternoon, he was thrilled to find a reply. The flirtatious banter went back and forth for several days, and he found himself constantly wondering who this mystery person could be. Before his scheduled day off, he left a note on his car door that said, "Don't miss me too much on my day off." When he walked out to his car that evening, the note left for him simply had a sad face drawn on it. He chuckled, thinking the game would pause until he returned to work. But the next morning, he woke up at his house, did some chores, and walked outside to check his mail. As he approached his car parked in his own private driveway, his heart stopped. There, stuck to his driver's side door handle, was a bright neon pink sticky note. He walked over, his hands trembling, and read the words, "You look cute when you are sleeping." He was instantly filled with a deep, cold dread. This was no longer a harmless game at work. Whoever this person was, they had followed him home. They knew exactly where he lived, and they had apparently been looking through his bedroom window while he slept. He hoped it was just a coworker playing a prank. He crumpled the note up, threw it in the trash, and tried to forget about it. But when he returned to work, the notes did not stop. However, because he had stopped replying, the tone of the notes changed drastically. They were no longer sweet and flirtatious. They became angry, demanding, and incredibly hostile. One note read, "You better answer me, and remember, I know where you live." He was terrified, but still convinced it was someone from work. He decided to leave one final note on his car door, warning the person to leave him alone, or he would call the police. That afternoon, his note was gone, and there was no new note left on his car. He felt a massive sense of relief, hoping that the threat of police involvement had finally scared them off. But that very night, his relief would turn to absolute terror. He woke up in the middle of the night to a strange, soft sound coming from somewhere inside his house. He sat up in bed, holding his breath. Listening intently to the darkness, he heard it again. It was a faint, shuffling sound, like someone slowly walking on the hardwood floors in his living room. He grabbed a wooden baseball bat from beside his bed and slowly stood up. His house had a long, narrow hallway that led from his bedroom directly into the open concept living room, kitchen, and dining area. He crept down the hallway, every muscle in his body tense. When he reached the end of the hall, he stopped. Whatever bravery he had when he left his bed completely vanished. He reached out and flipped on the dim kitchen light, scanning the open space from where he stood. He was too terrified to step out of the hallway, fearing that someone was crouching behind the sofa or waiting around the corner of the kitchen counter. He stood there in absolute silence for what felt like an eternity, but he heard nothing more. Eventually, he convinced himself that his mind was playing tricks on him. He turned the light off, ran back to his bedroom, locked the door, and turned on the television to drown out the silence. He eventually fell asleep. The next morning, he walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of juice. He stepped up to the refrigerator, and his entire body went completely numb. Stuck right to the front of his refrigerator door was a bright neon pink sticky note. Written on it were the words, "You cannot keep me away," followed by a hand-drawn smiley face. He stood there frozen in sheer horror. He ran through the house, checking every single window and door, but to his bewilderment, every single one of them was still locked securely from the inside. He lived completely alone. His family lived in another state, and he had never given a spare key to anyone. Somehow, this person had entered his home while he was asleep, walked right past his bedroom, left a note on his fridge, and departed, locking the door behind them. He called the police immediately and explained everything. The officers took a report, but they admitted there was very little they could do with just a few sticky notes. They checked the parking lot cameras at his retail job, but the employee parking area was on the side of the building, completely out of the camera's range. The police concluded that the stalker had to be someone he knew personally, but he knew he had never given his key to anyone. He was too terrified to stay at his house, so he spent the next few nights at a friend's apartment. While there, they went to a hardware store and purchased brand new locks for every exterior door of his home. When he finally returned to his house, his friend stayed with him for the first night, and nothing happened. Months passed, and the notes completely stopped. He began to let his guard down, believing that changing the locks had finally solved the problem. But more than 2 months later, as he was walking out of his front door to go to work, his heart sank. Stuck to his front door was one final neon pink sticky note. It read, "I guess you do not want to play anymore." He called the police again, but once again they could do nothing. He immediately went out and invested in a high-tech home security camera system. Thankfully, he never received another note. To this day, he is convinced that the stalker had somehow obtained a duplicate key to his original locks. And he shudders to think of how close that person must have been to his bedroom door. On the night, he stood at the end of his hallway with a baseball bat. Each of these stories leaves us with a lingering sense of unease, a reminder that the world is full of mysteries that logic cannot always explain. Whether it is a dog reacting to something unseen in a freezing basement, mysterious children seeking entry to an apartment that is not theirs, or an elusive stalker who always seems to find a way inside. These events remind us of how fragile our sense of security truly is. We lock our doors, we turn on our lights, and we try to convince ourselves that we are safe in our homes. But sometimes, the things that terrify us the most are the ones that find a way inside anyway, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and a chilling reminder of how vulnerable we really are. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of today's episode in the comments. And remember, we have a whole playlist of true crime episodes ready for you to binge right now. Until next time, see ya.